Hello everyone, I'm CharaCouture, and welcome back to my creepy Catwalk commentary, the show where I discuss each and every episode of the Boulay Brothers Dragula Season 5. I hope everybody is all buckled up and ready to go because, whoa, Nelly, is this episode a doozy. So to recap, last week we had a haunted hotel floor show and lip sync performance challenge. Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to Satana in a very cutting tribute to The Shining. Before we get into this episode, this is going to be an interesting one because this is technically a two-parter. This is a two-part challenge. We've got both this episode and the next one that are going to be encapsulating our theme this week, which was Monsters of Rock, a Dragula staple. Or can I just say, I am so glad that this is a two-parter because it gives me time to get caught up in my play-along looks. That being said, here is my play-along look finally finished for episode 2's Trash Can Children Challenge. And if you want to see the behind the scenes of my thought process when it came to designing this little dung beetle sculptor character, you can head on over to my TikTok to catch the behind the scenes of that later this week. So, we come back to the crew in the lab discussing who they think is going to be sent home out of the three. Some folks, namely Blackberry, say she thinks it's Anna's time, that Satana she enjoys more personally, she would like to keep her around. A lot of them discuss how they would like Orgotic to not come back because competition, but also Jay doesn't want them to come back because of the whole drink scenario, which I still think is totally ridiculous. I know it wasn't a lot of a drink that was poured on Jay, but it was still rude, it was still uncalled for. It's the principle, like you just do not do that. And as they're all talking, in walks Orgotic. Much to Neo's excitement, they run over, they have a little kiss, it's very cute. Then we get these like ridiculous double exposure shots of their faces, them talking about how they're excited to be back. And then we get this jump cut to Jay saying what we're all thinking. We don't want romance storyline. We do not watch Dragula to watch monsters fall in love. For me, I watch it because I love the art of drag, I love the craft of drag, and I love watching people make things. I want to see more of that. Less of this. Boulays, you said you were doing more art this season. This is not that. Put the romance away. Stop it. We don't want it. Like, honestly, this just makes me wish that one of them gets cut in the next couple of episodes because I want this storyline done and over with. I don't want it explored. I don't want it featured. I don't care, frankly. Move on. And then after Orgotic has returned, Anna walks in and Blackberry is gooped because Blackberry was so sure that Anna was done. After Anna returns, she states that the extermination challenge was a great wake-up call for her. It's brought her back and she's ready and raring to go. She's ready to let Lucy LaDuca and head on into this next challenge with a fire under her ass to not be so like uptight and precise about things. Have a little more fun. So then the Boulays show up on screen, and am I mistaken in thinking that there's just a lot of blood on them? Like, have they always been like this? Is it supposed to show continuity of them killing people? I'm curious to see how that's going to play out over the rest of the season. Our cast learns that this week is the annual Monsters of Rock floor show. They specifically go out of their way to mention that they are looking for big volume, big silhouettes, spikes, and think big arena rock star looks. They want exaggerated proportions, big rock star hair. They want you to take it to the extreme. But they also learned that the worst look of the week will be cut from the competition immediately. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, and do not move on to part 2 of this challenge, which is to go into a music studio, learn and record heavy metal vocals for the Boulay Brothers' new track, Gods of Death. So much for not being anything like that other drag competition, am I right? I suppose it's less licensing money they have to pay by doing their own music. So like, work. Budget. They also learned the winning band's vocals will be featured on the final release of said track. So this then sparks the discussion of, well, who would you want to be in a band with? Who would you not want to be in a band with? And there starts this whole conversation that runs through the rest of this episode about Anna, because Anna's more quiet, she's a little more understated, she's not this big loud personality like people like Cynthia or Jay. Anna clearly has personality. She gets some good zingers in there from time to time. In comparison, she's definitely not as loud as everybody else. She's not taking up as much space. And I understand Blackberry Blackberry saying, we're trying to pull you forward. We're trying to bring this out of you. But if that person's not this like giant windmill of a personality, that's not gonna be helpful to them. And I think the way that it got brought up originally through like shady comments of, well, you were quiet and Satana was fun to talk to and she was nice and I liked her, oh, blah, blah. I would get pissed off too. We also see that everybody is really focused while they're making these looks because there's a lot more involved today. And you know, it's not just the challenge and the look that sends you home. It is your look alone. There's definitely a very different energy in the lab in this episode. Blackberry takes Fantasia aside to learn a little bit more of her story. I'm not gonna go into all the details of it here. I think Fantasia's story being on TV like this is so well needed. We are always going to need more Black trans women representation in media. And hearing directly from her what her struggle has been and like where she's come from and her experience with being in and out of jail and, you know, being a fugitive and on probation and all this stuff, how that's shaped her and made her into who she is today, I think is really important. I wasn't a big fan of how the lead-in was handled in terms of like the editing in the show. Felt like production had a bit of a heavy hand in making that story happen, but at the same time, I'm glad that that story happened. Cynthia goes aside, grabs Jay, brings them into the other room to talk. I will say, after episode 2 and the fight that they had and the arguments and the clear like butting of heads that those two had, I thought this conversation was arguably the best of the ones that have been like, I'm gonna pull Jay aside and have a chat with them. This is like the first time we're seeing vulnerability. What annoyed me with Jay before was that I felt like Jay's behavior was very performative. It felt like it was a front, like an act. Whereas Cynthia, behaving in a very similar way, feels just like her being her. This conversation really gets to the core of it, that Jay acts the way that they do because they don't want to let people in. So they make their whole persona around being a jokester and being like silly and goofy all the time. While that's fun, that doesn't work for everybody. And if you act like that all the time, people are gonna start getting tired of it. People are gonna start wondering like, what's this person covering? What's this person hiding? And Cynthia brings up, she can tell that this is just like a defense mechanism and that like there's something deeper down with Jay. Just be honest with us about that. Like just be open about it. Be vulnerable. Like I think that will humanize Jay a bit to some of the contestants, or maybe they won't be on their case as much. But again, I thought this was a really nice conversation to see. It felt like it had a really good resolution. They had a nice moment. I think it's just nice to see the two of them having like this genuine human conversation. We love to see growth. Alrighty, let's move on to the floor show. Alrighty, starting things off as always, we have the boulets. I have to say, I like basically every element of these looks. However, I don't like them all together. I love the hair. I love they have different skirt lengths. I love the shoes. I love the gloves. I love the detailing up around the collarbone area with the stoning and stuff. But I just don't think that everything really went all that well together besides things being red and black. Also, we stand a browless look here. There's also no judges this week. It's just the boulets making this decision. So, on we go. Okay, first up of our monsters, we have Anaphylactic. I really enjoyed this a lot. I thought the coffin shoulder shape was really cool. I thought this was very different for her. Again, I wish the tights matched better with the green tones in the look, or that she had just done like a gray or white to go with her skin tone. I thought the green was a little odd. I mean, I get that it's an accent color. It did feel a little out of place. I actually really liked this hair too. I thought it was very cute. I thought it read very 80s. It felt very on theme. The best part of this look, to me though, however, has to be the back of this. The chains and the almost like safety pin spinal cord. That looked so cool. And we only got like a little glimpse of it, but I wish they would have shown it a little bit more because there's some really smart detailing in that particular piece. And we only got to really see the front of it. I was excited to see that this is the most energy she's had on stage by a long shot so far. So it feels like maybe a different Anna is showing up to the competition. All right, next up we have Blackberry. I loved the actual garment. The bodysuit, the padding, the body was perfect. The bodysuit was great. I loved the huge spiky shoulder pieces. What I didn't like was the makeup. I thought when you get up in those shots, it just didn't look very clean. It looked very messy. I think there could have been more precision in the eyebrows and mustache detailing. My biggest gripe with this is that the boulets are like, why would you contour a bald head? That's pretty weird. And then you have performers out here like Sasha Velour, who famously contours her entire head. She doesn't just go here and stop. She keeps the shape going, and then she wraps it around into the contour, into her skin tone, and then carries it down the back of her head. So like, I think if Blackberry had taken the purple of the blush and like the beard color, and instead of just having the contour around the face and then having it go like from purple to gray and then to white, like if they'd done like a purple gray, like it was like buzzed hair, and then had done that into almost a skin tone, I think that would have been way more successful and it wouldn't have looked as odd. Also, I'm sad the mohawk didn't work, but I do agree that it does work silhouette-wise with a bald head. I wish we could have seen what it would have looked like with the mohawk, but at the same time, I don't think that this was unsuccessful because the mohawk wasn't there. Not my favorite look this week, but another solid outing from her. Up next, we have Nia Hulu, and God, do I hate that I don't like her, because her looks are so freaking immaculate every single time. Every detail is intentional. Every silhouette choice makes sense. I love this like leather take on a famous Eastern silhouette, and then like grommeted and spiked and safety pinned to high heaven. I loved the makeup. The real star of this piece though to me is the katana microphone. That's so smart. Like it's so good. Like she's got such good ideas. I enjoyed this immensely. I think this is my favorite thing she's done since the first episode, by a long shot. This is where her fashion background really comes in, but I would go so far as to say she has the best eye for silhouette and fabric treatment out of this cast. Up next, we have Jarvis Hammer. My first thing that I wrote down when I saw this look was, oh no, I think he's in trouble again. And for me, the second this walked out, the writing was on the wall. Referencing an actual rock icon, great idea, great jumping off point. It felt like a twist on a David Bowie look, versus Jarvis as a character through the lens of a David Bowie aesthetic, if that makes sense. I like the silhouette of the hair and the style of it a lot, but I do agree with the criticisms that Jarvis is given, that with this bright red and this bright blue, it's very Thing 1, Thing 2, and it went into this very cartoony place when it should have been a little darker. I think maybe if the hair was black, or had the outfit not been red but was white instead, it was black and white with the blue accents, I think that would have been a little bit better. I think this look very much fits the challenge as a theme. However, I don't see Jarvis as a character in this look. And on top of that, the judges specifically called for big, large silhouettes, big volume, spikes, big hair, all that. And Jarvis, especially when you see Jarvis in the wide shot with everybody else, Jarvis's silhouette is so small when you have it compared to all these other looks that have like large shoulders, big hair, width, verticality, all these things, exaggeration. And the only thing that Jarvis has is the exaggerated silhouette of the pant. It just isn't as immediately striking as the other contestants. Like, it's just not as immediately impressive upon first sight as the rest of the cast. Next up, we have Fantasia, and this to me was like hard rock Tina Turner. And by golly, did I love it. This was so good. This is, again, my favorite hair of the episode. This is like the perfect proportion. I loved this bodysuit with chains as fringe. I've never seen that before. Thought it was so cool. Loved the jacket. Loved the shoes. You could put this woman on stage to do a rock concert right now in this look, and I would believe it. The real big thing for me though with this is the wig reveal. When she takes that wig off and there's all that glitter and confetti on her head, even without the big hair, when she's just like, buzzed down like her little small hairstyle, that even works really well too. And it's among my favorite looks of this season so far. Presentation-wise, look-wise, the makeup is so cool, so fucking good. This is the first challenge so far that I felt like this is a real marriage between what the challenge is asking for and her drag aesthetic and her drag sensibility. Props to ya mama, because she's giving mother. She mothered this, I have to say. Next up is JK. There's some cute details in this. There's some interesting elements. I actually really liked the hair on this a lot. I loved the makeup. Jay consistently has one of my favorite faces each and every week. I thought this makeup was so good. It's not a big silhouette, but it's got visual interest with the sleeves that extend. This felt very Hot Topic. Like, this is an outfit that the girls I was friends with in middle school and high school early on, this is that girl. I did not dress like this, but everybody else I was around certainly did. But again, I think it kind of suffers from the same problem as Jarvis, is that everybody went up and went with like such a big vertical silhouette, or did something that was a huge statement piece in their silhouette. And their statement piece in this look are the sleeves, and the sleeves are like kind of a minimal thing, like they're pretty small. Once again, like the first episode, when you look at Jay's look compared to everybody else, there's just a lot of like lack of detail and precision in some of the construction of this, and it just does not hold up compared to the rest of what's on stage. Like our next look, Orgotic, I have to say, this look just possibly maybe my favorite look of this season so far. This truly feels exactly what Orgotic said they were going for, of being like an actual monster from a rock album cover. I could see it. And what I think is so fascinating about Orc's drag is that Orgotic has this ability to take these really common household objects, really common materials, they're cheap, and make something like this that just looks incredible. I do think because it's so much black, it does kind of get washed out on stage, but the wings are so cool. The horns I loved. There's just a lot of really cool pieces in this, and I think this is the best that Orgotic has looked all season. And the treatment of the materials in particular on the wings really take this into like a punk direction that I'm very here for. Okay, next up is Cynthia Doll. It's cute. I like the shoes. And the flame pattern, it's fine. It's a stage costume. Like, it's not anything incredible. Cynthia's looks are the least exaggerated in terms of the theme most of the time. I see her point of view. I see her perspective in these. I like her makeup. My biggest issue with this look is that while she has the exaggerated proportions, everything is too vertical. She doesn't have anything that goes out. I don't know. I think had she done like a kind of sculptural, fiery, like big hair, almost kind of like heat misery, like had she done something like that had a lot of verticality to it and some shape instead of just straight up like mohawk mullet, and maybe instead of the straight up and down shoulders, had she done like a flame detail off the side that was structured and stood up on its own, freestanding, real big out at the shoulders, and then it would taper in as it came down on the arm, it would give her silhouette this like upside down triangle shape, and it would have created that exaggerated proportion on the sides that I think this look really needed. And finally this week we have Throb, who did this bug bejeweled Elvis idea, which I thought was very fun. I would have never expected anybody to do an Elvis look for the Monsters of Rock challenge. Or my favorite part of this look is the secondary color scheme, where it's all purple, orange, and green with this black and white. It reads very like Halloween colors, but it's not like overbearing. It's just enough of everything. The purple in the makeup, the green stones in the hair, there's some orange detailing in the makeup too, and like the lapels being green, the cape being green, the bugs, the stoning of that, the rhinestone spiderwebs on the shoes. And I think this is another look that, like Jay's, is fairly small in comparison to other people, but it's got enough things going on with it that like at least it's got visual interest. I think that's what the two of them have over Jarvis's small silhouette, because Jarvis's look, once you got past the Baphomet when the legs were together, that was it. They just didn't really have all that much going on to it. It felt really simple compared to everybody else. Fantasia's is kind of like that too, but she makes up for that with the hair. Well, I thought it was a very refreshing color palette. I was kind of surprised that the judges liked it as much as they did, because it felt a little too bright and not dark and creepy enough for what they were wanting, especially if they're gonna criticize Jarvis for being too cartoony. This look was cartoony also, and was also a bright color palette. I don't know. I'm not a boule, I'm not a judge, I'm just a random tea girl on the internet with opinions. So the floor show's over and it's time to get into results. They start calling everybody off one by one, and I really appreciate the fact that they gave every single person a note. Right off the bat, Cynthia's called safe. Throb gets some notes that his look needed editing. It maybe had one too many ideas going on. I agree. I don't think he needed the little guitar in the hair, but he's also safe. Anna gets quite a bit of praise for her look this week, for her drastic improvement, for finally like showing up to the competition, really applying the feedback she's been getting the last couple of weeks. And they also note she has a lot of poise naturally, and she needs to let go of that for this challenge. I'm excited to see if she will or not, but she's also safe. Next up, they talk to Jay, who once again they criticize for not having the most well put together look. It lacks a lot of polish and craftsmanship compared to the others, and for the lack of finish on this look, Jay is told they're up for extermination tonight. Then Neo, Orgotic, and Fantasia are called forward as the top 3 performers this week. Once again, Neo and Orc are in the top. Neo's been in the top every single episode, and the last 2 episodes, I didn't think she necessarily should have been because I didn't feel like she followed the challenge as well as other people that were just called safe. However, this week, totally agree. Like, this is the correct top 3. And the performance of Fantasia's look in particular seals the deal, clinches her first win. Yay! Mother, mother, mother. Well deserved. And once again, 4th week in a row, I agree with who wins. Obviously, she's moving on to next week too. Then we move on to Jarvis. While the reference was there and the idea was there, the look didn't fit the challenge well enough. And for that reason, he's up for extermination. Blackberry gets some feedback, then she's also called safe. She's good to go to move on. This bottom 2 hurts for me because going into the season, Jarvis was my preseason fave, and I love his drag. I love his point of view. I think he is one of the most interesting artists I've ever seen. And then we have Jay, who, while I didn't like Jay the first couple episodes, I'm really starting to come around to them, and I like having them on TV, and I think they make great television. I mean, it's pretty iconic that they've been at the center of the core drama of every single episode so far. That's a talent. So I'm sad that one of them has to go home. So they're told that in order to move on to the actual performance part of the challenge, they have to prove they can deliver a rock performance with a lip sync battle. Come on, are you kidding me? This is just Drag Race. This is straight up just Drag Race. This is, of all 5 seasons and Titans and Resurrection, anything the Boulets have done, this single episode is the most Drag Race formulaic, and I'm not a fan of it. I think given that the tour is a big part of the prize, they do need to prove that they can perform. But I think the way they chose to do this is odd. Allow me to rant for a little bit here. I think the biggest issue with this is that all of the preseason of this show from the Boulets was that this season was going to focus more on the art, less reality show shenanigans, less drama, more creativity, more platforming of the work that these artists are putting on display. And this episode has had so many fights, so many arguments, so many reality show producer heavy-handed moments. There were multiple conversations pulled aside like Drag Race does. Or then we have a lip sync battle to determine who stays with the bottom 2 on a runway that's their new runway that is structured exactly the same way as the Drag Race runway is. They come on screen in the workroom in the same way that RuPaul does to introduce the challenge. The Boulets themselves, I don't know if this is other producers doing this or the Boulets or Shudder wants them to make it more Drag Racy or what. For years, the way the show has been talked about and marketed is that it's the anti-Drag Race. It's not like the other drag show that they will not name. They act like RuPaul is Beetlejuice. You say Drag Race 3 times and then RuPaul is gonna walk in, you know, giggling as he hands you a lawsuit or whatever. You know, the show that shall not be named is so different and so against what they do and gets in the way of drag and gets in the way of inventiveness. But they are doing beat for beat the exact same things that Drag Race does. They say, we're not like the other shows. We're our own thing. We're different. We're so quirky. I was talking to some friends about this earlier. For me, the best way to describe the Dragula versus Drag Race relationship, in Dragula's mind, the way they grandstand about how different they are, saying that the two of them are the same is like comparing like 2 different forms of currency, when in reality, they're quite literally 2 sides of the same coin. They are not adjacent, separate, disparate forms of currency. They do the exact same things just with different flavors. Because of the format, this episode in particular being so drag racy, I think it made the episode suffer overall. There's so much tonal whiplash in this episode. Like, one second Jay's fighting with somebody, the next second Jay's crying with Cynthia. There's no time to like let it sit and just let it have a moment. It's just constant something. Quite frankly, it feels like it's trying to be Drag Race without being Drag Race, and it's not doing a good job at being Drag Race because it's not supposed to be. But yet here we are watching this show that season after season is becoming more like Drag Race. At some point, you need to stop saying we're not like other drag competitions. It's not as unique as they act like it is. I love the people on the show. I love the show, don't get me wrong. But this episode was frustrating for me. Anyways, let's continue on with the episode. Enough about that. We can discuss that in the comments. The two of them have to lip sync. I've never heard this song before. I don't know what it is. To the artist out there, if you're listening, congrats on your song being used for the show. Jay, hands down, wins this lip sync, knocks it out of the park, has more rocker energy. Jarvis's performance is really small. I think ultimately, given the format of the episode, the right decision was made. The right person won, the right person went home. Am I very sad about it? Yes, because Jarvis was my favorite. Given the looks for this episode, I think it was the right decision. I think it was Jarvis's time. As much as I loved Jarvis, as much as I wanted him to win, I just did not see it happening. In all honesty, Jarvis is dismissed, and in true Drag Race fashion, he says thank you for the opportunity, a little farewell comment, and then he turns and walks away, and everyone claps. This is also really the first time in the history of the show where, outside of them in Titans watching people drop, this is the first time where we're actively seeing somebody go home, be sent away. This elimination feels very heavy. We then find out that the bands will be made up of Fantasia as band number 1 leader. Cannot wait for that. And we find out that her band will be made up of Mia Hulu X, Anaphylactic, and Blackberry. I think this will be interesting just to see how this goes. Again, this feels kind of production stunty, but Anna and Blackberry are put in that group because of drama. It's obvious. They're there for the storyline. They're there for the conflict of Anna thinking that Blackberry doesn't like them for one reason or another. Are we surprised? No. And then Orgotic is the leader of band number 2 with Jay, Throb Zombie, and Cynthia Doll. Again, Throb brings this up, that Throb is in the group of people who are all fighting with each other. Cynthia and Jay argue all the time. Jay is now having this conflict with Orgotic. Totally ignore the microaggression Throb had against Jay a couple weeks ago. I think that group is gonna be the one that butts heads because you've got 3 really loud, strong personalities. I'm worried that that group is going to be the one that falls apart and suffers. I'm calling it now. I could see Fantasia getting a second win and leading the band to success, and I could see very easily if Orgotic can't get it together, I could see Orgotic being sent home. I could see Cynthia getting sent home because she's too a little, 5, 6, 7, 8 windmill. As sad as I am to see Jarvis go, can we take a second to talk about how incredible this death scene is? The transition from the color shots into the black and white, like the flickering of the backstage lights. Oh, I loved it. Oh, it got me together. Here's my problem with Dragula. As much as I hated the Drag Race format of this episode, this here, the level of big brain energy of this death scene. This is what I want out of Dragula. I want referencey things. If you haven't seen the preseason interviews, Jarvis specifically mentions that his character, his ghost character, canonically dies by a spotlight falling on him. And that's how they kill him off in this competition. In the one look, he says specifically, I died by spotlight in 1970s. And Ziggy Stardust, the album that Jarvis's look is inspired by this week, is from the 70s, the early 70s specifically, I think 72, 73, something like that. The fact that Jarvis is there in a flesh tone, more like normal human look, killed by a spotlight, falling on him, turning him into the dapper gentleman ghost that he is today. Big brain, explosions. That's so good. If he had to die, that's how I would have wanted it to happen. It's so good. I loved it so much. I will say, when it started off, I'm like, are they gonna kill him with a spotlight falling on him from the stage? How is that gonna work? And he basically walks around the set in a circle and then comes back into the runway. And when I saw the spotlight hitting the stage and he was like walking back into it, I knew what was gonna happen, and I loved every second of it. I think this is probably now my favorite death scene in the history of the franchise. Every episode so far has been a reference to a horror movie. This episode doesn't have a horror movie. Instead of it being an established horror narrative that we recognize, Jarvis is just this iconic, methinks. The horror narrative that they use to set up this death is his own, and I just think that's pretty fierce. So sad. Like, I'm so torn up that Jarvis is no longer in this competition, but God, what a way to go. And there we have it. That is episode 4 of season 5 of the Boulet Brothers Dragula. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, subscribe, all of the things. If you want to come hang out with me live, maybe talk about Dragula, other Drag Race seasons, and who knows what else we get into over there, feel free to join us over on my Twitch channel. We're going to be playing the new Pokemon DLC pretty soon in a couple of weeks, so get excited for all of that. And again, thank you so much for the support on all of these. We're getting really close to 250 subscribers. Thank you so much to everyone who subscribed and has stuck around to be on this little journey with me. I really appreciate it. I think I want to do like little countdown videos of my favorite looks of every season and go through every season of every franchise of Drag Race. So maybe I'll start putting some of that together in 2024 and get that off the ground. What do we think about that? But I believe that's everything I need to leave you on for this week. We will see you back for part 2 of this challenge next time. As always, stay kind to yourself, stay kind to others, don't take life too seriously, and until next time, toodle-boo!